On this episode of the Innovative Schools podcast, Kevin sits down with Debbie Silver to talk about her life in education and what she would have told her younger self when she first started. Come on, let's learn together. Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of the Innovative Schools podcast. This is a special episode that we have for you today. Kevin, who you haven't heard from yet, but you will be hearing from more, sat down with Debbie Silver at our Innovative Schools Summit in New York City back in February. So he sat down and did this little interview with her to just talk about her journey. She's been an educator for a really long time. And so we got to hear a lot about how she got started, kind of the pitfalls that she ran into as she started her career and through her whole career. She's super funny, super helpful, and just nice. And so this is just Kevin sitting down with Debbie Silver talking about all these types of things in education. So I hope you enjoy it, and we'll get to it.
Welcome to the Innovative Schools podcast. And I am incredibly excited to have with us today Debbie Silver, Dr. Debbie
Whoa,
Silver.
thank you. And you can just call me Your Highness.
Well, all right. And welcome. We're in Times Square.
I'm on Broadway.
You're on Broadway.
I am so excited.
Is this your first time?
No, it's my second time to be here. But
all right. So we're going to get into this, and for those that know you, understand that you have been an incredible teacher for many years. You are an author, you're a world traveler, and you have done so many things in the education field. Now you're teaching and training, educating teachers and administrators. So my first question to you, and I kind of know some of it, but why teaching?
That's a great question, because people always say, did you always want to be a teacher? And I'm like, no, actually, no. Just I wanted to be a comedian, and I wanted to be a writer, and maybe a missionary.
To where?
Japan. I don't know why that was in my head, but. And it's weird because it's kind of come back to that now. But what happened was, in my first marriage, I got kidnapped and to a very rural town in Louisiana. And I'm calling out Logansport, Louisiana, because I love it now. But when I first got there, it was very culture shock, because I'm from Fort Worth, and big city girl, big city high school. They taught 5 foreign languages. Mm-hmm. 3 of those were 3-year programs. We had everything. And I ended up in this little bitty rural town. I had 2 years of college, and they were absolutely desperate for teachers. Louisiana was the 49th in pay. Mississippi was below us. And I was in a place called DeSoto Parish, and DeSoto Parish was at the bottom of the pay in Louisiana. So, and we were rural, and we didn't have a tax base, and we didn't have industry, and nobody moved there. So the superintendent came and said, would you take a position as a temporary teacher? And I just started laughing, because I said, I don't even have a degree, And he said, well, how much college? I said, I have 2 years.
What were you studying?
Drama. What did you think? Theater arts and speech communication. But yeah, I was a theater major. I was a ham. Always have been. And he said, well, we really need teachers. And I was working in the family hardware store at that time, which I was really bad at. I was really terrible at, and didn't really like it, and wasn't really assimilating into the community at all, because I'd married the most eligible bachelor in town, and nobody wants to talk to me, and they keep calling me city girl, and I was really sad, and I thought, well, how hard could it be to teach? Duh. And I filled out all the paperwork right there in the hardware store where he came to see me.
Did you really?
I did. And this is the crazy thing, you guys. This is nuts. I knew nothing. I'd never been in future teachers. There's no teachers in my family. I said, okay, now what? This was in the middle of June. He said, well, school takes in, that's a redneck for begins. Yeah. School takes in on August 24th, and out there at Logansport Rosenwald, I believe they take in at 8 o'clock. So you'll want to get out there at least a quarter till 8. I didn't know. I'm like, okay. Another thing that was crazy was, besides there was no, there were no books, there was no instruction, there was no PD. A lot of the teachers are going, good. No, it was I had nothing, but I was so, let's just say ignorant, that I just thought, oh, well, I'll just show up. But I wanted to be prepared. So I got there at 7:30 on the 24th.
Before 8 o'clock.
Right, before
All
8
right.
o'clock. Found out the kids are already there. They could not pay teachers any extra to come and work before the kids got there. And a lot of the teachers were coming down from Shreveport, Louisiana, which was an hour away. And they didn't show up until the first day, which is also when the kids showed up. So
clarify something real quick
Yeah.
before you continue with it. So they gave you no curriculum.
No,
They gave you no books.
no, they told me I was teaching fourth grade.
You were studying drama,
Yes.
which you were really good at, and you still are. And so now they're throwing you into a classroom.
fourth grade classroom.
Which you have nothing. You
No,
have no
I've
background
nothing.
of anything.
Nothing. I
Okay,
just
good.
had
This
my
is
purse.
good situation.
I had my purse.
In your bird.
So I'm in one of the outbuildings and it's a rural school. It was poverty stricken. I mean, later I came to find out a lot of my students, and we were still segregated then. So we were the African American school. And a lot of my kids didn't even have indoor plumbing. I mean, we really, really were struggling. But they took me out to my room, and it's 100 degrees. It's Louisiana. It's August, and it's 100% humidity, and there's no air conditioning, not in the whole school. I'm like, uh-oh. I get in my little room. There's paint peeling off the walls, and I'm walking around, and the secretary said, "No, I'm gonna bring you your students." And I'm thinking, oh God. And I don't know what to do. And I thought maybe I should put a poster up, but I forgot to bring a poster. And I don't know what fourth graders like anyway. I don't even know how old they are. But when they walked in, they were little. I said, "You're so short." And one of them said, I said, "What grade are you in?" And one of the little girls said, "First." And so I said, "Oh, no, honey, there's been a mistake." And then they started, and I'm like, no, it's fine. We're going to take care of it. Just stay right here. We're going to take care of it. And I thought, let me go to the intercom and alert the office. There's no intercom.
You hollering
I
down,
know, yeah.
hollering down the hallway.
Oh, the window. Hey. So I wrote a note. I didn't know what else to do. And I just said, "Dear office, there are first graders in my room. What should I do with them? Love, Debbie Pace." And that was my name then, was Miss Pace. And so I'm trying to calm the kids down. They were so adorable, and I was like, "Please, y'all don't cry. I mean, we're going to take care of you." And the note came back and it said, "Dear Mrs. Pace, you're the first grade teacher. Teach them, love, the office." I don't know what happened, but I know a lot of teachers are going, "That happened to me," because they hire you for one thing and then they switch it because you have no guarantee that it's going to be what they tell you it's going to be.
So you're thinking fourth grade, and you got first grade.
I got first grade.
And they were all crying, and you were crying.
I was crying. They didn't have kindergarten back then. So this is their first day at school in their entire lives. And they're upset. I'm upset. There's weeping, there's wailing, there's gnashing of teeth. And those little kids were upset too. So I'm trying to get permanent records done because our parents didn't have cars and they couldn't pre-register because that was in a different, when I say parish, in Louisiana, it's like a county, a district. But our district was like 40 miles away, the central office. So they just put them on a bus with a birth certificate and a shot record. It was my job to translate all that.
Wow.
And there were a lot of names that, were foreign to me. I'm trying to learn their names. I'm trying to get this stuff straight. And finally, about halfway through the morning, I just lost it. And I just have never felt, I don't think in my whole life I've ever felt that out of place because I had moved to a new state. I'm in a small town. I'm in a community that it's just not clicking yet. And I've just been given 24 of the most beautiful children I've ever seen. And they're crying. I have no idea what to do. So I started crying. And I ended up on the floor of this dirty old building shack I was in, this wooden floor. And I know the people that teach littles will get this because the minute I started crying, they stopped. And they're like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, and so they got on the floor, and now they're trying to comfort me, and they're stroking my hair, they're patting my cheek, going, breathe, it's okay. And I mean, we're just all in a pile. And I said, "Guys, I have to tell you something." I said, I'm not from here. I'm not doing very well. And they said, that's okay. Don't cry. I said, no, see, I'm not even a real teacher. One little smart aleck said, no kidding. And, and I said, well, it's okay because at lunch I'm going to quit. And then they started crying again. And I told them, I said, guys, I would love to, I'll come visit you all the time. I mean, I just lived a block away. I will come. No, stay, be our teacher. I said, I can't be your teacher. I don't know how to teach. And truer words were never spoken. But one of the little girls said, if you'll stay, we'll show you. Like, well, okay.
All
Now
right,
20, what did I know? All right. But you know what? That was the greatest gift I was ever given. And I think it's because, and I'm not recommended that path for anybody, but the way it happened for me, I learned along with the kids, and they told me what they really needed. And I didn't have any preconceived ideas. And the things I didn't understand about the African American culture, the things I didn't understand about rural, the kids taught me. I'd go, well, why did they do this? And then they'd tell me, I go, oh, that makes sense.
And they probably taught you some things you didn't understand about yourself.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And I really did. At that point, I said, this is it. I'll always do this. This is, and I started back in college. I was driving to Stephen F. Austin, which is in Nacogdoches, Texas, which is an hour away. And I just changed to elementary ed. I thought, I'll always teach first grade. And then by the end of first grade, I realized something. And, I always talk to teachers and say, you have to be you. You don't need to be anybody else when they go, well, we need this great teacher model. No, we need lots of models because there are people out there that are just wackos and they're doing a great job. They wear their roller skates, they come in with their magic wands, they got the music going, but that works for them. And I always tell teachers, if that's the way that you connect with other people, and you can communicate essential ideas, because that's absolutely important, then you do it. You be you. Don't worry about being me. And if you're quiet and you're not at all like I am, you're going to reach kids more easily than I do because I'm so random, whoop, squirrel. And I go off and leave people sometimes. So it takes all of us. But what I realized is people think I have ADHD, but that's not what I have. What I have is ADDOS. Attention deficit sparkly. Just get really distracted.
Get really messed up.
I get really messed up. And littles need a very more linear, more concrete, more sequential. They just need that order. So I started getting promoted, and I ended up in middle school. And when I got there, I just thought, oh, my people. I mean, they laughed at my jokes because, when I taught elementary, I'm doing voices, I'm just entertaining myself. The kids would just look at me like, poor Miss Pace. She's so crazy. And the first time I got sixth graders and started that, they're rolling in the aisles. And I'm like, da, da, da,
you hit the jackpot.
Da, da. This is it. So I stayed in middle school forever and then ended up, and this is ironic, but I know a lot of people know there's something called the curse of knowledge. It's genuine because my blessing is the languages. I love journalism, I love drama, I loved English. But when I was teaching, it was very hard for me to understand what they didn't understand because that was just always a part of who I was. And you're from North Carolina. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. There's a vernacular there that and
what are you saying?
I know.
What
just put it out there. Boy, what are you trying to say? Who are you people? And I wasn't that great. And also reading is such an important thing that needs to happen. Yeah. And I wasn't trained in that. I started getting trained because I was going to school by night. But they needed a science teacher. And nobody wanted to teach science. Nobody wanted that. I said, well, I started thinking, well, if you're in science, you can go outside and you can do different stuff and you can watch movies. And so I said, I'll do it. And so I took the job and I taught 5th and 6th grade science and started going to our Louisiana Science Teacher Association, going to conferences, studying about it, doing hands-on. This is when hands-on first started catching on and minds-on and all that, and just loved it.
So let me ask you, because you're going from first grade where you knew nothing,
Right.
and y'all are crying on the floor,
We are on the
and
floor.
they're crying,
Yep.
and you're trying to figure it out, sending pigeons out the window to the
Right.
office,
I know.
and then you're with them, they're teaching you. You go to middle school, and what was the hardest transition? Because we have people that listen, we have teachers that are doing that now today,
Right.
and they're trying to make a transition, and they're trying to figure out all the things that are difficult with the transition.
Right.
So what was the hardest thing that you faced in transitioning from elementary, from first grade to middle school?
Right.
But the second part of that, besides what was the hardest part about that transition, what caused you to want to stay?
The transition for me was a little easier because I went up gradually. We were such a small district, and I was last hired, so I'd get put in wherever there was a spot. And I had taught fourth grade for a couple of years, and fifth grade a couple of years. When we got to sixth grade, it just clicked. It was like these are. I get these kids. For one thing, my personality's a lot like a middle school person, and so is my humor, unfortunately. But I kind of found my place, and that's what I urge teachers to do. I say, don't give up on the profession. Maybe you're in the wrong building, or
That's
maybe
good.
you're in the wrong discipline, like I was. I was a great science teacher because when the kids would say, I don't get it. I don't know what's the difference between mass and weight. I'd go, I know, right? And then I'm like, okay, here's how I figured it out. And we just did it. And it just meshed. And there were so many fun things to do, in science. And I'm learning right along with them, just reading 3 pages ahead, going, whoa, I didn't know that. But it was an adventure. But I would say when you're making that transition, because I've taught every grade.
Yeah.
From first grade up. I never taught the littles, but I've taught every other grade all the way through college. The first thing is, and everybody says this, and it sounds so trite, but it's absolutely true, get to know your students. Get to know them. But you also, if you're going to teach middle school, you have to have a very good sense of self. I'm so glad I didn't start out in middle school because I was an idiot and I knew it. But by the time I got middle school kids, I knew what I was doing. I also knew I was a good teacher, and I knew I could connect with kids. Now, I wasn't giving up on anybody. So I had that because they're at that period, I love you, I hate you, I love you, I hate you. And you just have to not take yourself too seriously. The job is a very serious thing that we do. I am dead serious about teaching. It is so important what we do. I mean, we are molding the next generation. This is huge. But when we take ourselves too seriously and decide that, my way is the only way, or they're out to get me, or I got slighted, you're asking for trouble.
Why do you think that people do that? What's the biggest thing that you think is going on when teachers do that?
I think teachers have lost, people have lost their trust in teachers, the public, but I think teachers have lost their trust in the system. And I just posted a meme that was talking about all the things that are wrong with the system. But I said, teachers are not your enemies. They're fighting the same thing you are. Understand that. And I think a lot of people don't get that. But, when somebody starts, we wrote a book, Deliberate Optimism, where we talk about, we're kind of programmed to be negative because that's the way we survived. Early man, you couldn't take anything for granted. The saber-toothed tiger may be right around the cave, and they didn't trust, and that was early programming. So it takes work to overcome that, predisposition to be negative. But when you say, okay, and I love Martin Seligman, father of positive psychology, because he talks about dispositional theory, and he has you analyze, is that a real argument? Are you just globalizing? Oh, this always happens, or are you being realistic? Are you basing it on something that really is irrelevant? But he gets you to the point. What we're saying now, and this is very much the Stoic philosophy is, okay, let's look at this. What are the things I can control, and what are the things I can't control? For me, in my system, and most of the systems with whom I work, you don't get to control what you're teaching. I mean, to some extent, it's, where you scored on your
Sure.
praxis and all that. But if they decide they need you in kindergarten and you have a kindergarten certification, you're going. And so if you can't control that, there's no sense, tilting at windmills and no, no, no. So you start looking at things that will work. What are some things that might be better? And oh my gosh, I love my dinosaur unit. Now I'm teaching this point, and they're not going to let me teaching dinosaurs. And I always tell teachers, I say, give me your curriculum. Tell me what you want to teach. I will find it in your curriculum.
Yeah.
I promise you, I can find you a way that you can get that in there. Because, when we're passionate about something, when we love it, it just translates.
So that's the key.
Yes.
Is passion.
It is passion.
And I mean, obviously you've got a lot of passion, but I think maybe the system has confined teachers to trying to figure out, hey, you got to teach this curriculum, you got to teach what the state is mandating, you got to teach what the national.
Wait. Pacing guides.
So there you go.
Oh my God! And there are places where I'm serious. Superintendents will come in and they have a pacing guide, and all they're looking at is, are you on this page on this date and doing these essential ideas? And I'm going, okay. There was a bus wreck last week, and kids are still upset about that.
Yeah.
You can't just keep moving. And we're in New York, and I'm thinking about 911.
Mm-hmm.
That the teachers that came in the next day and taught it, well, we still need to have the spelling test. I'm like, you're nuts. This is reality. And so what we're doing is we're hearing kids, we're giving them a voice. And if it's something you're not comfortable with leading a discussion yet, or you haven't gotten the mandate from central office how we're going to handle this, you can always say, kids, open up your journals and just, tell me what you're thinking, write it out. But give them I think what kids like about me is I'm very reality-based.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when I taught at the university, I had students that said, well, Dr. Silver, I was teaching elementary science methods. And they said, you require more than any other teacher. I said, I know. And I said, but I'm going to tell you guys, last year I was teaching in the school. So I'm coming to you fresh. And these are the things that I know are going to help you when you walk in. I don't want them walking in like I did.
Yeah.
You need this file, you need these things, and this is what I believe are critical to your teaching. If you can think of any other way to get you there that's easier or shorter, we'll do it. Mm-hmm. Because I do not believe in busy work. I do not believe in wasting your time. And I think we owe it to kids to say, this is why you're learning this. And if we can't give them a reason, then maybe we shouldn't be asking them. Same with administrators. When they come in and say to a teacher who's saying, could I just get a little mini fridge and keep it in my room because that would be great. I'm on a special diet and I could keep my stuff there and, blah, blah, blah. And they're, no, the mandate says, we have to curb electricity. Well, I'll chip on the electric bill, or I used to tell teachers, just buy one and hide it. Or make friends with the, home ec teacher or whatever. But, you don't just go, no, they're just killing me. They're not going to let me. Get an ice chest, get an igloo. But if that's something you need to do your job, figure it out. I've always said teachers are the most resourceful, creative people on the planet. And you know why?
Yeah.
Because we have to be. Because we have always, what did we do, during COVID? Flip the whole script overnight. And for our digital natives, not a big problem. But for the dinosaurs like me, that are like, wait, what is Zoom? Wait, what is that? What's a Google page? I mean, and it was literally overnight. No training, no goals, no anything, just threw us in. And what did teachers do? They rose to the occasion. They did it. And we learned along the way. We made a lot of mistakes, but who wouldn't? But we also learned some really good things to take back when we were face-to-face, like the need for knowing the SEL, the social emotional learning. And I was thankfully glad about that because, Jensen and people out there have been telling us for years, this is essential and it's not a soft skill. That implies it's not important. So I won't call them soft skills. They are absolutely essential. And teaching kids responsibility and resilience and humility and good manners, that's all part of it. And if you're going to get them to that, to your academic goals, which we keep bringing up, 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 the only way we're going to do that is to reach those kids first. But you tie it all together because I did have teachers when I started working with that. Oh, another add-on. Now we have to stop and have advisory. Now we have to stop. And I'm like, you don't need to stop and do anything.
Yeah.
You need to integrate it. And a good friend of mine, another middle school teacher, Deidre Stafford, and I wrote Teaching Kids to Thrive. And that whole book is about integrating SEL skills in a natural course of curriculum through different subject matter, through your classroom management, through everything you do, every choice you make echoes how you feel about kids. Do you trust them? Do you not trust them? Are they safe? And I tell teachers, your class starts long before that first day of school.
So for those that SEL is a dirty word,
Right.
what's another word they can use?
We can call it
Life skills?
Life skills, yeah.
Teaching life
Yeah.
skills. All
Well,
right.
we used to
Because
call it,
we want to help all you
and I
teachers
get
out
it.
there.
I
Yeah,
get
yeah.
it. People
Sure.
tied it to. We won't even go there. I don't want to get political.
Yeah.
But it was tied to certain things. I'm going, God, that's not what it is. It's not
Correct.
that at all. You're not telling kids what to feel. You're telling kids how to recognize their feelings, but how to deal with
Basic life.
It's life.
Yeah.
We used to call it character education.
Yes. Yeah.
And then people got upset about that. Of course, people get upset about everything we do. But you're basically saying, I want to teach you the self skills you need to be successful the rest of your life. And I want to teach you the social skills you need to deal with other people. How do you collaborate? How do you cooperate? Because we all have to. And when you get into the workforce, you don't get to pick your team. You just, your boss expects you to go in there and make it work. And a lot of our students have no experience with that.
So let me ask this, because I think it'll be helpful for our audience to know, and I think it's good for educators to understand that we got to be different.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think that's what we're leading up to, and you're teaching in college now, teaching students who are wanting to be teachers. And the only way let me preface my question by saying that when I was in high school, I took Spanish because I thought I want to learn the love language. I want to be smooth with this and mi amor. But I had amor.
Give me some girls.
That's right. And but I remember 3 days after Spanish class, my Spanish teacher called me to the front, and she said, "Listen," she said, "Kevin, I don't think you're ever going to speak Spanish in your life. So it's probably best you find another class, and you still got a couple days that you can switch classes." So I went and took home ec so I could get out and get on early release.
And then you really hit on the girls.
Then I really worked at TCBY Yogurt.
Nirvana.
There you go. But I fast forward a number of years, and I went to language school in Costa Rica
Cool.
to learn Spanish. And as I'm there, they did the coolest thing, because there were 3 of us that were in a group, probably about 30 of us that were entering in at the same time. And there are 3 of us that could not learn a normal way of learning.
Right.
So we're visual.
Yes.
Show me what I need to kind of act it out, do the acting thing,
Yep.
help me understand it. And they literally got together as a staff. The director of the school and the whole staff came together and said, "Hey, we've got to create something so that these 3 can learn."
Right.
And they transformed, put us in the same class, and taught us 3 totally different than they taught anybody else. So people would come by our class, and we're sitting under the desk and hollering out things so we could learn.
Doing a
learn
play.
Spanish. Doing whatever it is. What are 5 things that you would tell teachers
Yes.
to say, "Hey, here's how you can do that for your student"? Because ultimately, we want to make a difference. Ultimately, we want people making a difference in the lives of students who are growing up to become the next teachers, become the next president, whatever they're going to be.
In their strength areas.
In their strength areas, and or the next carpenter, whatever that is.
Exactly.
And so, what are some ways? 5 things, maybe. Give five things that teachers could do to help build their classrooms in that kind of style.
Well, the first thing, and I always, when I'm doing classroom management, and I taught that at the university too when I was still there, but I said, do an inventory. Ask questions, and the what's hardest for me to learn and why. My favorite subject and why. I learn best through, and again, you can do just the modalities, which are easy. But you get all that, but you also, and I also have some little icebreakers I pass out, and the kids walk around and ask each other questions and fill those out. So it gives them, we start talking about it. But I don't want to put anybody in just a group. Like the teacher that told you, see, that rubs me wrong that she
I can
said
see
that.
it. I can see it when I said
I know
it.
my eyes were like, what? And I think what she was saying, the way I teach it, you're probably not going to get it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're not going to get it. But you also pay attention to your kids, especially those that pull back, those kids that have been kind of floating along the bottom, maybe even causing some problems because they don't want to look dumb. So they'd rather look like they're causing you a problem than being dumb. But if you walk by and you're talking and they're drawing, look at what they're drawing because it could be about what you're talking about. That's how they make sense of it. And if it's not, then teach them, how to use graphic organizers, how to use Toolbox, how to use some of these programs that we have on YouTube now that teach kids how to do that. Add a lot of music. Whether they're musically inclined or not, music can actually change the ambience of the room. And that's a great way to do it. But, give kids options. Okay, here, and I have no problem going, these are the essential ideas. The district, the state, okay, that's our responsibility as teachers. But we can give them different ways to meet those. And we can say, all right, I need to know that you know these things. You put it on the board. We call it a rubric, but everybody's sick of hearing about rubrics. So just these are the things. So take your choice. You can make you can develop a PowerPoint. You can write a song. You can do a rap. You can have a debate. You can do. It is amazing what they come up with. Things I've never seen before, like a diorama.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, because I'm so not spatial. I'm just like, how did you even do that? But you also pay attention because I know in science, I had a little kid that was, I guess, autistic, but high in functioning. And he would never say anything, but he liked our room and he liked the ambiance there. And one day we got on receptors and capacitors and resistors and capacitors, and I was having trouble explaining it. And Anthony finally just got fed up. He said, let me show. And he came to the board and he drew it, and they were all like, whoa. And I mean, he knew. And
But how cool that you let him do it.
Yeah, I
mean,
like, please.
Yeah.
He ended up winning. When we did science fairs, this is kind of along what you're asking. I got away from the traditional science fair, with the rules and very strict, and it is to teach scientific method. But I did a science expo, so you could just come in and do a demonstration of something that you were really interested in, and you could do it with other people, or you could do it with your parents, or you could team up with an expert. But we had this big expo, and the kids all chose their own way to participate. It was also volunteer. I didn't make them do it, but Lord, we had loads of kids. Anthony did something on electricity that wowed the judges so much. He won a trip to space camp. And in Alabama, he got to be a space camp.
That's awesome.
And his mother wrote me the sweetest letter. And she said, Anthony, he loves you. And I'm going, Anthony saved my butt, because I really wasn't understanding. Electricity's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, really, try to get somebody to explain it. But you watch for that. Okay, that's 2-3 things. But the 4 things, giving them the choice of the way they show you. All right, now this is the one that's hard for some people. If you're random, it's not hard for you. But if you're not random, it's going to be harder. You vary the way that you teach. So you don't always do it the same way. Like, I'm going to assume that your Spanish teacher had a way that she presented, and you responded, and, I do, we do, you do. And that's not all bad. For some kids, that's the best way they learn. There are kids that love workbooks. There are kids that love PowerPoints where they can take notes. But you start teaching in different ways. And if you can't, then you invite an Anthony to come up and show the class. You also put them in small groups a lot because they need a chance to talk to each other. And kids can explain to each other better than I can a lot of times. So I want them, and for the kids that are reluctant learners, or they might have Asperger's. They don't want to be thrown in a large group. That's very, very intimidating. But usually with one or two, they're okay. And you build that community there, and it builds a safe environment within your room. And I love it. And you can call it cooperative learning, or you can call it think, pair, share, or whatever you want to call it. But you also give kids an opportunity to respond. And teachers are getting really good about that now. Now, a lot of us have technology, and you have clickers, which is great for your introverts because they can click without ever saying anything out loud. But you automatically have a poll that shows everybody votes. And once you vote, you have a vested interest. But if you don't have that, you can get a piece of whiteboard, and you can buy them at you don't have to go buy little whiteboards. You can go to Lowe's and get them to cut you pieces, and get a dry erase, and kids just hold up their board and just write your answer to that, hold it up, and you do that. But we're learning a lot about retrieval now, which I wasn't really good about. I didn't even know that was that important. But we're going to have to give kids, in order to build those synapses, we constantly retrieve information. We teach them how to do that.
Yeah.
So we don't just go, and then here's your major test. No, it's little tests. It's little, or do a brain dump. Okay, write down all the major points we just covered in this class today. Everything you can remember. Now get with a partner and see if they got something you didn't get. Or if you didn't understand it, ask
That's a
them.
great concept.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't make it up.
No, but I'm just thinking how many people don't use that.
I know, and
they've got to be dot.
One of the best teachers I ever observed, and this is before retrieval even came out, but I was watching her. She was a high school science teacher, and she walked in, and she said, all right, get out a piece of paper. It can be anything. No grade. I just need to know. And gave them a real quick little oral exam, and it had like 5 answers. And they were all looking, and she goes, okay, now we're going to talk about it, and I want you to be your own person. Did you really know that? Because so many of the times we're letting that one kid talk all the time. And so the kids in the back are going, oh, yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
But they don't know if they really knew it, or they only knew it because that kid said it. So they think they know, but then they get on their own and they don't. So we have to give them a chance to individually, can I retrieve this? And, all y'all that went to college, you probably did that, before you had a major test. It was like, okay, wait a minute, and then we had little acronyms or whatever you did to help you. Well, let's give those tools to kids. Because some of these kids think that, that other kids are smarter than they are. And I'm like, they're not. They are. Now, people are turned more a certain way by birth. I believe you have a certain amount of inheritance that just come out of the womb with an artistic ability or musical ability or writing. But everybody can get better. Everybody can get better. And that's our goal for you. And I'm tired of telling kids by the end of the year, you're da-da-da. I'm just going, you know what?
Just get better at
Just keep moving forward. Just keep moving forward. Let's get rid of the pacing guides. Let's get rid of all of that and say, this kid made this much gain during this year. So you want me to really get some people going here? This is what I think we should do. When you're going to do a test.
Go ahead, tell them.
All right. You don't do this crud that we do now, where you go in at the end of the year and take the test and then tell a teacher how she failed. She's never going to see those kids again.
Yeah.
And kids are different. So why don't we go at the beginning of the year and we just do a pre-test for the essential ideas, give it back as quickly as possible so that we see where they are starting in our route. This is what they are able to know and do right now. Not listen to what happened last year, whatever. This is what we're seeing. And then we find, and we have computers, we have AI that can do this now, find a comparable school, what you might call a sister school, maybe 2 or 3. And then from those schools, we take data and say, this is what we can reasonably expect in growth from that kid during the school year, given their economic background, their, how many parents are in the home, what kind of reading, the greatest level, those things that are influencers, we factor all that in. Then at the end of the year, when they take a test, it is compared to their particular factors, given that, a rural school in Logansport, Louisiana, with this much population, this average income, this is what you could expect your kids, the gains to make. And then if a teacher doesn't have kids making those kind of gains, we have to say, okay, why not? And then we go in with some prescriptive things for that particular teacher. And I don't think we do enough of that.
No.
I think we're in a punishment. I've got you, you're out, or, well, she's terrible, but she's got tenure. I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? They are terrible. Tell them.
Tell them they're terrible.
That's you're out the door.
You heard it from Debbie Silver,
Yes,
not from me. Debbie Silver
Principals,
said that.
you have my permission to tell teachers, I just don't think this is a good fit. Only now human resources is kids. You can't use that word anymore.
Don't tell HR.
No, go tell HR. But, there are just people that don't. A strong leader, and, speed of the leader, speed of the pack.
Yeah.
It is the leader. And I've never seen a great school that didn't have a great leader. And I've seen a lot of schools. That's
the key.
It is the key. And so, and just because you're a great teacher doesn't mean you're going to be a great leader. And we've always assumed that, because after I was, like teacher of the year for the state, they're going, oh, we need to make her a principal. No, no, I don't have those skills.
Terrible principal.
I would be a terrible principal. I don't want that. I don't like it. But let me teach other teachers?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm there all day long. Awesome. I loved it. I love teaching pre-service teachers, because they're still idealistic.
And you're good at it.
Well,
you're
I like
really good.
it.
I mean, watching you do your thing is amazing, and your passion for it, and
I want to
how
remind
it comes
them.
across. Yeah.
And and I just happen to be obviously an extrovert, and I feel like I am a voice for teachers. I don't feel that differently than other teachers. I just know how to get it across because I'm such a ham. And but like when I was teacher of the year, they're going, "Oh, the best teacher in Louisiana." I said, "Don't ever say that again, because that is so not true."
I just fooled a lot of
Right?
No,
but
you didn't.
I'm a voice for the great teachers of Louisiana, of which there were many,
And other states.
and other states. And I'm really glad we recognize teachers, but I don't like teachers competing with each other. And I think sometimes we're put into a dogfight with each other, not just among ourselves, but the community and other people are joining in. And my thing is, and I'm going to deliver this message tomorrow, my keynote is, we have got to take our profession back. And one of the things that we do is we shoot ourselves in the foot, because we are so guilty about going into the community and telling tales out of school. And, there's this teacher that's just a waste of clothes. And you're out there going, nah. All right, we represent the school. And when we go out and say things like that, people hear us and they repeat it. You don't hear doctors ever throwing off on other doctors or lawyers. Most people of integrity, real estate, whatever, they don't do that. My husband's a former insurance person. He said, when I'd get somebody and they're going, that person was bad. He goes, all I knew is next year they'll be in somebody else's office talking about me. But he said, I wouldn't entertain that. And I think we as teachers have to start, like when we see something come on TikTok, can you believe they did this at this school? And we're all, oh man, why don't we say, you know what? I don't know of a school where that would happen.
Yeah.
That doesn't even sound real. And if it is real, we need to get the other side of that story. But we're pretty bad about not giving people the benefit. You hear about that teacher or that school or that superintendent, and we just jump on that bandwagon because we're angry about what's happened with us. And I think less said, better done. We need to get together and just go, you know what? Before you make that judgment, you really need to talk to that teacher, because that's not the norm. And if you need some words for your questions, I'll help you with that. But I got really good about when people would come to me to complain about another teacher in our school. Can you believe that guy's doing that? I said, I'm not in his class. I have no knowledge of that. But if you have a problem, you really need to be talking to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to
You're the one to stop the gossip.
Right. And I'm going to assume he has best intent. But if you don't feel that's right, then you go ask them. You have every right as a parent to make sure that your child is being handled, in a reasonable manner with reasonable goals.
That's so good, because think about the students that you're impacting and the difference that you make in your school as a culture for the school, as a culture for the classroom. when your students see that, hey, you as adults, you as teachers know how to actually communicate with each other and
Right.
stop backstabbing each other, stop
Exactly.
talking bad about the other
And
teacher.
the kids
And
figure it out that
yeah,
quick. They know how to go get Miss So-and-so to talk about, they know how to, especially middle school, They told me one time, Miss Bagley said so-and-so about you. And of course, I know Miss Bagley. She's one of my best friends. She was joking. I said, yeah. I said, when she gets off her meds, you can't go by anything she says. The kid's like, oh, Miss Pace. I said, guys, stop. Just stop. Just.
So let's do a speed round.
All right.
All right, because I want people to know Debbie Silver.
Okay.
So they know the teaching stuff, they know all, but I want them to know Debbie Silver.
Okay.
So who's the one person in your life that's made the greatest impact and why?
Wow.
You feel like you're on Oprah, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
All
I'm going to say my husband now, my next ex-husband, Lawrence. Lawrence met me when things were, not good in my life and not good with a lot of things. And he always believed in me. And he's the one that told me when I got offered the principalship, I was just going to take it because it was like the next step. And he said, Deb, I think you could do it. I think you'd be good. But I don't see that as your passion. I don't hear you talking about that. Maybe you should look at another thing.
Wow.
So I waited, and then another opportunity came in that changed everything. But there's so many people. I have a bunch of boys, my children, my grandchildren, educators that my English teacher in high school, all my best teachers were English and speech.
Okay.
Yeah. But now I'm a science teacher.
But your husband?
My husband, yeah.
Your husband now?
Yeah, my husband now. This now, for
This
now.
one, that's for now. For now. Okay.
My for now husband.
Second question.
Yes.
Who is the student that made the greatest impact on your life and why?
Lots of students, but I'm gonna have to tell
You don't have to tell the name either. I mean,
Oh, she wouldn't mind. It's
Okay.
Tara Lee Waddles, who was one of my students at Rosenwald when we were still segregated, and she was real quiet, real shy, real sweet. And I'm embarrassed to say this because I didn't know it at the time, but she was in charge of her mother and dad had both absconded, and she was in charge of her 4 younger siblings. Her grandmother, much older woman, and Tara, and they didn't have indoor plumbing. But I remember her as a second grader just being this sweet, precious child. And, I loved her, but I loved my kids. And then I got her back in middle school, and again, very shy, never wanted to do, she had a gap between her teeth, and I think she didn't want to smile, but very, very sweet and a good student, just average student. And went to high school, and then she graduated. And when that particular class that had graduated, they called and said, how much would it cost to have you come be our speaker at our reunion? Wow. And I said, well, I don't know. How much do y'all have? No, I didn't. I said, no, I'll come. And so we got there, and they said, well, Tara Lee's in charge. And I thought, oh. Wow. So I was looking at Lawrence, and I said, okay, now look, these are my kids. These are country kids. Just don't say anything. I don't know what you're going to be expecting, but he goes, damn. I'm like, just. And so when Tara's in charge, I thought, whoa, because she's so shy, just so. Oh my God, this woman walks out, shoulders back, head up, this military posture, giving orders like a colonel. And I said, Tara Lane? And she said, Tara. And I said, Tara. And she said, hey, Miss Pace. And she looked at Lawrence and she put her arm around me. She said, this is the woman that changed my life. Wow. And I'm like, I don't know what she's talking about. So long and short of it is that we sat with her at dinner, and she was toying with the idea of, she had been in the Navy, and she told me, she said, I can't even swim. I'd never been out of Logansport. I got on a plane. I joined the Army and Navy, and then I got in the Navy, and I got promoted up, and now I'm in the Air Force Reserves, and I don't know if I want to be Lieutenant Colonel. And Lawrence, who was Navy and just big military, he said, oh, no, you have to. So by the time it was over, he said, all right, I will if y'all will come to Barksdale, see me get my pen. I said, we will. And she did that. And then we're talking back and forth, and she's a single mom, 3 boys, 2 of whom had gone to college, another in junior college. And she said, Miss Pace, I'm going for full colonel. I said, oh my God,
Wow.
Tara. And she eventually got full colonel, but here's what happened. I said, Tara, I tell so many stories, but they're almost always about boys because I have boys and I'm kind of a boy person. I would love to tell your story. I said, but teachers are going to say, she said, well, you can tell them you changed my life. I said, no, I can't because I don't know what I did. I mean, seriously, I don't know. And she said, you saw me.
Wow.
And she said, you saw me and you made me believe in myself and you gave me courage. But those 3 words, you saw me.
You did the thing that
That's
every student wants.
just see me. Yeah. I'm gonna start crying. Don't do that.
Don't do it.
But
that's real.
Well-
because how many students, and I got one more question before we finish, but how many students someone was talking to me about, giving prizes and things out for their behavior. But the truth is, how many students just want you to see them and just hang out with me in the cafeteria,
And
make
why can't
a
that be your
difference,
prize?
a personal difference
Yes.
in my life because you saw me.
Yeah, come see me at lunch.
Yeah.
That's your prize. We're
Wow.
I'm going by McDonald's. We're gonna eat in my room. I've got a whole chapter in my book, Drumming to the Beat, about, pros and cons. And it depends on where the kid is, mentally, emotionally. But for the most part, they just want to be heard. They want your undivided attention. And that's not always possible when you've got, like, sometimes I had
Sure.
37 kids. But
It's not at that time, but it is in the cafeteria when
and
you
it
don't
is at
have any
another time.
kids. Yeah,
Exactly.
at the end of
Or
the
if
day.
they're walking in the room, you look them in the eyes, and I tell my management people, you can stop a lot of stuff before it ever starts by looking them in the eye and making some kind of contact when they come in. And you may be a back slapper, a high five, you may be a hugger, whatever works for you, you be you. But you let those kids know, I'm glad to see you. And I was like such a little kid. I loved, if I had a science experiment, I'm like, come on, y'all, hurry up. But you'll never get here. And they're like, okay.
We'll do it.
Yeah.
So last question. What would the Debbie today, what's one thing that if you could go back and tell the Debbie who was sitting on that floor with all the first graders, tears in her eyes, feeling like, what in the world am I doing?
Yep.
What's the one thing that Debbie today would go back and tell Debbie then?
I would say you have found your calling. Just you need to see the kids. That really touched me, what she said. You need to connect with the kids. You need to be firm. You need to, absolutely, you are the boss of the room. The kids need to know that. And I am the boss of the room. But I explained as best I can to kids why we're doing things, the way we do things. And I really do try to get to know them as best I can. And I think you've heard me say this before, but I would write letters to all my kids. Yeah. And it was more for me than them. I mean, it really helped me with some that I was struggling with. They're getting on my last nerve. And then when I made myself sit down and go, here's what I really, because I wanted to be sincere, here's what I really believe about you, then I'd go, you know what? And it's called reframing. And it's part of Stoicism. It's just it's the same, but look at it differently. If you look at it differently, then that thing changes. And everybody really knows that. But give yourself some grace. I want us to give each other grace. Yeah. I want us to give each other more support. I want us to be able to assume best intent by especially our peers and our superiors. But I want us to learn about the parents and the kids. Let's go with best intent first and not just jump to something else. Yeah. I also want to say that, when I used to say I want to be a missionary well, somebody asked me years ago when I first married Lawrence, and they said, did you always want to be a teacher? I said, and I told him that answer. And Lawrence looked at me, he said, Deb, that's what you do. And I went, I never thought about it, but I write books.
You're an author, you're a missionary, you're a teacher.
Yeah. And
you're
I
all
speak.
of it.
So it all, that's what I would tell Debbie. Just be patient. Be patient. And go this path that you weren't expecting.
And I can truly say, having gotten to know you, that go back and tell Debbie back then that Debbie, you're going to be amazing.
Kevin,
And
thank
you
you.
are. You're an amazing person. You're a gift to education, to educators, and thank you.
You are so
Thank you
sweet.
for choosing to be on here with us and
Oh,
share with
I love
all of our
AccuTrade.
community.
I
And
love the staff at
so,
AccuTrade. Woo,
woo,
go Rock!
so awesome.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
having
Debbie.
me. I love
Love
it.
you.
All
Love you.
right. Love
Thanks.
y'all. Bye, guys.
I hope you enjoyed listening to that conversation between Kevin and Debbie Silver. We do this podcast just to help educators, and we help educators by more people knowing about this podcast. So I want to ask you to like or subscribe and rate, leave a comment, all those different things. It just helps us to be seen more and helps us to help more educators. We've said on this podcast before that we acknowledge that being an educator is difficult, that there's a lot of challenging things. And we just want to encourage you to keep on going. All your hard work is rewarded with the success of your students. So I hope you found some inspiration today. I hope you learned something new, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Responsibility-centered discipline empowers students to own their behavior and academic success, creating a positive school culture. Responsibility-centered discipline challenges old classroom management, reward, and punishment programs and consequences that rarely result in sustainable behavioral change. Schools across the country that have implemented RCD have seen fewer referrals, fewer suspensions, and a better school climate overall. Ready to make a real change? Visit giveem5.com. That's GIVEMFIVE.com to learn how to transform your school or district with responsibility-centered discipline.
Earn professional development contact hours on AccuEd.com as you learn from the best in education. AccuEd.com is an online learning platform for educators with over 35 masterclass-style courses. That's more than 75 professional development contact hours you can earn on subjects such as classroom management, innovative teaching strategies, student engagement, and several more topics. AccuEd.com is full of practical and insightful training from K-12 thought leaders such as Pedro Noguera, Michelle Borbra, Baruta Kefele, Barbara Colaroso, and Michael Bonner. Head over to AccuEd.com to get started. Come on, let's learn together.
Join us at the Innovative Schools Summit, the nation's top K-12 conference. Connect with internationally recognized thought leaders, educators, and consultants as we dive into game-changing teaching strategies and research-based methods. Each summit features multiple conferences all in one location, covering topics like at-risk students, innovative teaching strategies, school discipline, and more. Create your own learning experience by choosing from any of the sessions at the conferences. With events in cities like New York, Orlando, Las Vegas, Nashville, and San Antonio, there's always a summit near you. There are 2 upcoming summits, and we want you there. The first is in Las Vegas from July 7th to 11th, and the next is in Nashville from July 14th to 18th. Go to innovativeschoolssummit.com to register. See you there.